Ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 6 p.m. Monday, October 27, 2014, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Meeks? Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Ms. Randall?
Here.
Mayor Wright?
Here.
Kathy, do you need to call roll?
Ms. Armstrong.
Here.
Reverend Fleming. Mr. Lamb.
Present.
Mr. Parent.
Present.
Ms. Bidenow.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Fred Ford.
Present.
All of the above.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chairman and members of the school board, it is once again my pleasure to be here in this joint meeting that we typically meet to discuss better ways or challenges or opportunities of improvement to do what's in the best interest of our students and our citizens. So I want to thank you for being here. Hope we can be very informal. I see we've got a structured presentation here, but if you would just recognize me or make sure I recognize you if you want to butt in so we don't have everybody at one time. But thank you for what you do. It is Dr. Fisher. This is our first meeting with you at the helm, and I'm a huge fan of yours, and so I really appreciate what you're doing in the interim until we get a And so with that, Mr. Chairman, do you want to start?
Well, I'll start by saying this, all of the above, we're here, try to meet the challenges and understand each other's problems, and try to build in the right direction as we're going now. We haven't missed a step, we don't think, with the new interim. She insists that I call her interim.
That's right.
She wants to make sure I don't she wants to make sure that it doesn't become permanent. So we operate on those premises. This afternoon, we have 4 items on here. Mainly the first one, the school quarterly monthly financial report. We are hoping that this puts us, everyone uses the word transparent. We thought we were transparent to start with. It gives you probably a little bit more detail, and hopefully it'll make it easier for you all to follow.
Okay.
Plus, Dr. Fisher, she announced it to us, has some good news that she got from Richmond when she went up there last Thursday. And we can discuss a big elephant in the room, the state, and nobody knows which way it's going to lead. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay, all right.
We'd like to have this meeting, and we hope that both parties can learn from it.
Okay, before we get into any members of the City Council have anything you want to say or add? Okay, all right, first up is our financial report.
Mr. Steele. And while he's getting ready, I gave you 2 reports that we had already indicated we'd give to you. Those came as a result of some questions from councilmen
Under this.
on the labor report.
Okay.
It's alternative education programs. I didn't want to give an answer that was incomplete, so I shared with all of you all, and someone else had asked me about the transportation, the status of where we were on transportation. That should be an up-to-date report from Dr. Fisher also.
Okay.
So those are 2 reports we didn't figure it was that important to talk about, but we wanted to share that information with you.
Transportation as in the school bus drivers? Okay, thanks.
And Mr. Steele, before you get started, I just wanted to share, just about 2 weeks ago, we had the State of the Region address that Dr. Cook does every year, former President of Old Dominion. And in one of his segments, he talked about our homeless children, school-age children throughout the region. And it was a very horrific number, and he listed in every one of the cities, and he I think he made an analogy that with the cost of transportation and all of the things, we would be better off as municipalities as going throughout our cities and buying these abandoned, blighted homes and putting them in it. It would be cheaper. And I thought that was astounding. So he had some numbers there. I don't know if anybody got a copy of that report, but I'm interested to see, and I don't know if you have that tonight, but the cost associated with our homeless children, with the whole transportation and the whole education piece. And I don't even know if you have it broken out that way, but he brought it up, and he tends to kind of shock the conscience of the region. He's always talking about different things outside of the economic piece, and he selects those on his own. And the fact that he actually talked about that, I thought was kind of staggering. And naturally, because Virginia Beach is the largest city, they had the most, and then Norfolk, and then Portsmouth. But proportionately, from a percentage standpoint, ours were extremely high. So
We may
hopefully at
have,
some
we
time.
may have the figures, and if we do, yeah, right, we'll get them to you.
Okay, all right, very good. And I know at one of the retreats you had, and at one of your meetings I sat in on, you talked about the number of kids you had. I think our number was around 200 or 270
yeah.
or something like that, which is 270 too many. But anyway, with that, sir, Mr. Steele.
Yes, sir. Mayor Wright, Chairman Bridgeford, city council members, school board members. The first agenda item I'm going to cover is the school's quarterly monthly financial report. The PowerPoint's going to go over some highlights. You also got a handout of the specific quarterly report, which has a lot of the drill down information. So I'll point that out to you also. In addition, I'd like to introduce a relatively new member to the school board and the administration, and that's our new Senior Director of Accounting, Brittany Dork.
Hey, good.
She comes from KPMG. She also has a bachelor's and master's in accounting and a CPA, and she's a welcome addition to the administration.
All right, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Okay, next slide. Going into a new fiscal year, you always develop a budget, and that's your plan for going forward. So these financial reports are going to cover the first quarter of that budget. But to let you know, we submit our budget both to GFOA and also the Association of School Business Officials. And ASBO, as they're called, recently completed and provided a press release on our award for this meritorious budget award. And to let you know that the and I quote the overall evaluation, which stated that the Portsmouth School Board budget is a fine document which includes a wealth of information in graphic and narrative form. The document is user-friendly for the average taxpayer with lots of data presented in different forms to meet the needs of varied users. Many components are suitable standalone documents, and the district is to be congratulated for the budget submission. And to let you know, this is available online to anybody that wants to see it. Next slide. So in looking at the quarterly report model, we wanted to take a look at what we were doing as far as reporting currently to the school board, but we wanted to meet the requirements of city council also. So we took a look at the Virginia Code, we looked at the school board policy, and we also looked at some best practices. And one of the best practices was in the Virginia School Board Association's finance manual, which they provided a template for quarterly reporting. Next slide. As we took a look at what we were reporting, and the one column says prior report, and then you look at the current report, that shows the differences of what we were reporting before versus what we're reporting now. And you see that we added several new columns in addition to what was there for the old report. Again, we provide a lot of the variance comparison before, and we continue to do that, but possibly in a little bit more detail. But we also added things that weren't covered before, including budget adjustments. Before, we didn't reflect encumbrances. And we thought that was important because your traditional financial report shows revenue and expenses, but we thought it was important to show any commitments that were made in the form of purchase orders or contracts to to really determine what was available. And that becomes really important as you get toward the end of the year. You not only want to know revenue and expenses, but you want to know what those commitments are. And then we also wanted to cover the quarterly appropriation requirement for expenditures, and we wanted to look at what's sometimes referred to as the burn rate, the use of funds. And I think burn rate might be a Department of Defense term when they're looking at budgets, but it's to show the efficiency of burning, and you're comparing it to different years, and sometimes if you see anomalies like you're spending too fast or even too slow, you can see those trends. Next slide. So this is the first quarter, and as you can see, the expenditures are less than revenue, which probably is expected because in a school district, of course, a lot of our employees are out in July and August, so we're not getting a lot of the payroll cost in the first couple months of the quarter. So that's to be expected, but you'll see that gap closing fairly quickly as we go into the second and third quarters. And this is just I guess a summary of what you may be familiar already as far as our revenue sources. Of course, most of our funds and revenue sources do come from the state, and our expenditure, as you can see, overwhelmingly is in instruction. Instruction is where we spend most of our dollars, and in fact, whether it's instruction or some of these other categories, payroll exceeds 80% of our payroll. Next slide. I bring this up again, the composite index, and this reflects, I guess, an issue with the future budget and the current budget. But just a reminder that Portsmouth, as it relates to all the other communities in this area, we're the lowest on the composite index, which basically is a reflection on the locality's ability to support education, and the state tries to adjust for that in the state budget. Next slide. Okay, here's that burn rate. So what we've done is we've compared a couple previous fiscal years, and they're all normalized to 100%. So they're kind of tracking, they all track to 100%. So you can see anomalies along the way. And you can see that the revenue received is about 23% as compared to 22% last year. And the expenditures are 15% compared to, rounded off, close to 15% last year. In your detailed package, besides the general fund, which we reflected previously, we do have some other funds, and those include grants, food service, textbook, and print shop. And here's some of the highlights on those. More detail is in your package there. And again, you'll see, just to let you know though, like on revenues, you'll see is 1.7 and expenditures 2.3 for grants. That's because we get reimbursed for those. So the revenues follow the expenditures. Next slide. Average daily membership. We are constantly looking at average daily membership because that is what determines, or a primary factor in state funding. So for right now, we actually have seen an uptick for 14 and 15. But as you may know, our final state figures are determined on March ADM. So we won't know really what our final state figure is until March. And so we're constantly tracking that to compare it to the budgeted number to see what the variance is up and down. So I guess it's looking positive that it's that high at 14,283 now, and it's bumped up. But last year it was also started off the year a little bit high, but then it started tailing off. So we have to watch that closely. And then the last comment, the other thing besides the operating budget, just to report on, these were the capital projects that the city funded for capital projects for schools, and we're looking forward to getting these started. I know I had just a discussion even today on a solicitation that should be issued shortly for the Wilson High fire alarm, and we probably should be seeing something shortly for these other projects. And for that ends my report on the quarterly report. Again, if as time goes by and you have any questions as you go through any of the detail, feel free to send those to either Brittany or myself, and we'll certainly be happy to answer them.
Okay. Any hiccups with these capital projects here? Anything we should know or?
Well, some of these are long-term projects, like, and they only involve the architect and engineer services. Like the HVAC for Churchland High is probably a $12 million project, and so this is just getting started with the A&E on that. So that's a multi-year, and it's identified in the city capital improvement project as a multi-year project. So some of these are just getting off the ground with an A&E.
All right. Next up is our conditional accreditation rating.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Wright, members of council, Mr. Bridford, members of the board, and all assembled. I brought this to you tonight, and I thought maybe in talking with the chairman of our board that with so many misconceptions out there with respect to the status of IC Norcom High School, you might be interested in knowing some of the data that we have compiled for you. And not only for you, but we compiled this for the Department of Education, Virginia Department of Education, as we sought to get them to approve a conditional accreditation rating for IC Norcom. This is, in fact, the year that Norcom High School was scheduled to be accreditation denied. However, the state will award conditional accreditation rating if there is improvement in the schools. And I don't have to tell you that you've heard and seen some of the things in the news about other school divisions and schools not being able to get conditional accreditation rating, and they were accreditation denied. There were many school divisions there in Richmond as I went there in September, in fact, all over the state, including most of our divisions in this particular area. But I share with you that we had one school, that was Norcom High School, that was in dire need of trying to get a conditional accreditation rating for. I also share with you that at the State Department, there were many schools, and there's a listing of those schools. Every division, all divisions in this region have schools that are in focus assistance, focus or priority schools. That means they're on the federal list of not meeting the annual measurable objectives for X number of years. And I'm very pleased to report that Portsmouth Public Schools did not have any on that list. These are the real dire schools in the state of Virginia. So you have a copy of the listing. I mean, they're all over the place. Every school division, with the exception of Portsmouth, is on that list for focus or assistance. But with respect to Norcom High School, as I shared with the State Department in September, one of the first things we had to look at was actually the demographics of the schools. And I don't have to tell you where Norcom is located. We live and breathe it every day. There is also information with respect to the number of students that are currently housed in the schools, the grade configurations and so forth, the ethnicity, and the number of certified teachers that you have. That's just for information for the State Department. And of course, the number free and reduced lunch, which we do not deem to be any excuse whatsoever. That is not what we're trying to share. However, the state wants to see that kind of information as we go there to report. We move on. The accreditation status, the areas warned. Prior to this year, Norcom was warned in 3 areas for accreditation. However, this year, we find that they're warned in mathematics. And we talked about that before. Mathematics is really a hard nut to crack at this particular point, basically because of the shortage of mathematics teachers. Mm-hmm. And that's not only germane to Portsmouth, it's all over, you know. In fact, just today, we learned that we lost just another mathematics teacher. Every year, this comes up. And we're trying very desperately to ensure that we're taking care of measures where our students are not suffering as a result of the loss of teachers. So that's an area they're warning. Another area in provisional accreditation, which used to be in an area of warning, is that of the graduation completion index. So those are the 2 things that we basically talked to the state about. The rationale for, they asked us for a rationale. Why do you think you are worthy of getting a conditional accreditation rating at Norcom High School? And we shared with them the following. There is some data that we wanted them to see clearly. I think we're losing it, but Brittany will find it. There's some data that we wanted them to be aware of, and partly with the mathematics scheme of things. As we look, go back to the other one. As we look at the SOL assessment data, year 2011-2012, you will see the Norcom High School was accredited in English, and that's where the problem started in mathematics. Hit bottom at a 37% pass rate. History, 60% pass rate, and in science, of course, were 83. Why did it go from an accredited school prior to that to a non-accredited school in 11-12? That is because the standards for mathematics and our history actually changed. The rigor was set in place, which was quite different from the things that had happened before, because not only do they want answers with respect to mathematics questions, now they want application with it. They want multiple steps, and there are multiple answers, which our students were not used to at all. Usually in our old math days, there's one answer to the math problem. Today, there's 2, 3, or 4 answers to the problem, getting it there. And we have to work backwards sometimes as we're working those problems. You have to know formulas. In addition to that, for mathematics, statistics was heavy. And statistics had never happened for our students before. Unless you were majoring in statistics in high school and so forth, that's another story, or in college. But statistics were not a part of that. We know now that statistics is a major part. 2012-13, with a new administration at Norcom High School. That's when the new administration went there. And part of the Constitution looked for new administration or new staff members, etc. In this case, we didn't have to go there because there was already a principal that just came on board, Dr. Sandlin. With English, you see that the schools pretty much remain as they were, not a significant difference, but you see the rise in mathematics scores over a 1-year period there. And then history, the rise into accreditation, 12%, and in science, there are your new standards. Everything that's highlighted in yellow represent new standards. This was the year that science hit those rigorous standards. So in 2013-14, you're looking again at essentially 79 to 80 for English. You're looking at another rise for mathematics, up to 61%, and history, definitely 76, and then the science rises there. So you can see here we're looking at one area that was not accredited based on the test scores from 13-14.
Dr. Fisher, can I interrupt? Yeah. So was that the argument that we made for that conditional
Yes,
accreditation?
that was
and that
part-
was the selling
that is
point
correct.
to show
That's
the
right.
new administration
That's correct.
and the improvement in those scores.
As we go on, let's put it a little clearer. There's a vertical line there. The vertical line represents the past.
Okay.
With the new administration coming on in 12-13, you see the rise in mathematics scores there. As we move on, another argument was in terms of annual measurable objectives. We call them AMOs. Those are federal targets, because in addition to state accreditation, we also have a federal target that says you must make a 10% improvement in the gaps, in the proficiency gaps of students year after year after year. So as you look at Norcom, you will see that for all students in 2013-14, they met AMO. Gap Group 1, because that represents the disadvantaged group, and then the Gap Group 2, you have the African American students raising up to yes. Gap Group 3, I believe there are Hispanics and others. They were too small a number to factor in, so you may see a TS there, meaning that the number of students didn't dictate that there were enough to work it. The economically disadvantaged, this was a large percent of our students, as you can see, with the free and reduced lunch we put up there. Yes, they made the AMO, federal guidelines, and the students with disability would drop slightly there, but nevertheless, still accurate improvement across the board. And you will see that's another argument for why we requested the conditional accreditation rating. As we move on, Another argument was the graduation index. Now, here before, in 2009, here's where Norcom sat with graduation, 64.8% of the students graduating on time. That means in 4 years, they're out of there. As we move up the ladder here, you will find that in 2014, 83% on-time graduation rate over a period of the last 5 to 6 years. That's significant. The state found that to be very significant. So much so that 83 represents provisional accreditation for graduation as opposed to accredited with warning for graduation, because that's another factor that plays into overall accreditation.
Dr. Fisher, would you happen to have that number there, 83 at Norcom, as opposed to what at Wilson and Churchland? What are
Yes,
those
we have them all. We have them all.
What is the
83
graduation rate? Do you know that off the top of
Wilson's
your head?
graduation was about 88%,
88.
which they came from 57% over the last 5 years to 88, and Churchland at 92% graduation rate.
Thank you.
Advanced placement participation. Here's another argument. We talk about advanced placement courses, AP courses. Where do we go above and beyond SOL scores? You know, that's not enough. We need to prepare students for college. Where do we go with AP or advanced placement? Where do we go with dual enrollment? Where do we go with first college? As you can see, over the last 3 years, there's been an increase in the percent of students who have made or earned advanced placement credits, 18%. Now, what does that mean for us? We brought you about a year ago the fact that the information from the College Board saying that Portsmouth Public Schools was on the College Board honor roll list. We improved across the board, all 3 high schools, and Norcom played a major role in that because of the tremendous increase that had taken place with the number of students taking advanced placement courses. Also, dual enrollment courses. I can't begin to tell you the number of students. You'll be proud of the number of students in Portsmouth Public Schools that are taking college courses through Tidewater Community College. We have students leaving Portsmouth with 15 to 24 credits, which means then they go in college as either an upper freshman or a sophomore level, already behind the courses behind them. And those courses, by the way, are transferable to any college, most colleges and universities across the country. You look at First College, we're very proud of what Norcom did with First College. We got on and we said, you don't have enough students going into our First College program. But look at what they did from 2011 to 2014. So you see a plus 38%. All these were arguments at the state level for a conditional accreditation. As we move on, areas of reconstitution, the state said you can reconstitute and we will grant you conditional accreditation based on 3 things. Number 1, you must change staff. Well, we already did part of that, okay? Number 2, you must change your instructional programs. We did a lot of that, and we'll talk with that a few minutes about that. And number 3, which is not on there, the state takes over as a turnaround school. Well, we weren't gonna have that, so we opted for the first 2, okay? Change in staff. Over the past 2 years, we have a new building principal. We also have 3 new assistant principals. All these are new over the past 3 years. The mathematics teachers turnover was 75% new teachers. Now, what does that mean? Yes, we lost some good teachers, but we also gained some good ones. And now we're also without a few good ones, okay? So we want to try to keep that momentum going. Mathematics coach. We provided a coach for Norcom High School for mathematics. In some of our retired people who did excellent jobs for us as math teachers in years before. And we also had a graduation coach, which made a large difference, a tremendous difference in the working in the communities, getting parents involved, getting programs involved so we keep our students in schools. I think Norcom staff is energized to build relationships with students and stakeholders for the successful 2014-15. You see the schools here, you should have seen the staff during the August pre-service week, how they were just completely immersed in their professional learning community, which they call SOUP. And they were chefs, and all of the people, all of the staff members who are on that leadership team participated in that professional development activity. Change in instructional programs. We talk about the change. We talked about staff changes, now we're talking about instructional program. We have employed the Johns Hopkins model for Norcom High School. And we're probably going to employ that model for others because it has worked tremendously well for Norcom High. It is a model where we focus in Algebra 1, which is probably the major culprit here of our scores for mathematics. And with that, we help students to build their skills and foundation skills because some students aren't where they need to be. So with the support of this program, we're able to get others up and running. The mathematics strategies include Johns Hopkins, CDOE academic review process for monitoring instruction. We are completely involved in the academic review process from the State Department, wherein we must make sure that what is being taught in the classroom is also being assessed. You can't teach at a lower level in the classroom and test at a higher level. They have to balance. So that's the emphasis there. IndiStar School Improvement Monitoring Tool, that is a new way for our school improvement process, professional development in Algebra 1 and geometry, mathematics instructional technology, lots of instructional technology. We have really depended on our technology programs, our computer acquisitions to help support mathematics. That's been a plus for us, particularly in light of the challenges we face with finding mathematics teachers. And of course, first and foremost, critical thinking skills, because that's the only thing and the only way our rigor is going to be addressed. As we move on with use of interactive achievement assessment, we changed for them, not only for Norcom, but for the division, our way of assessing. You know, we used to have a system that was sort of targeted or tiered to support the old standards. Our new tiers, our new assessment supports the new standards, the drop and drags, lots of computer acquisitions where our students are used to. Increased division support and co-teaching. We have specialists that are in Norcom High School at least 2 or 3 days a week for mathematics, every week. And they are there to help support teachers with professional development. They are even there to work with students with small group instruction. Give me 5, give me 6, give me 10 students. I'm going to work with them. That's what the specialists do. Implementing a master teacher model of support for Algebra 1, that is the VDOE Strategic Compensation Grant. Remember we talked about the fact that we don't have or can't get enough mathematics teachers. Well, with this particular grant from the State Department that you reappropriated to us, we were able to get $5,000 to each master teacher. We were able to give $2,000 extra to 2 supporting teachers of the master teachers. And those people actually engaged in doing some video cards and all kinds of professional development that's on technology so that teachers will be able to use them every day, even when there is not a qualified mathematics teacher in the tutorial session. Graduation Completion Index Improvement Strategy. The young man on the left is a Gates Millennium Scholar. Norcom High School, the only Gates Millennium Scholar in this area, probably in the state. They only give 1,000 Millennium Scholarships every year. There are 32,000 resumes for that particular grant or that particular scholarship. And this young man actually made that for Norcom High School, which means then that he can go to any college, any university that he chooses, get his bachelor's degree. If he chooses to go on to a master's degree or a doctorate, they will pay for that as well at any university he chooses. Norcom High School, granted, had that Millennium Scholar last year. Just to show you the graduation index. As we move on. For graduation, we look at credit recovery. The numbers are going up because not only are we leaving students out, we're not leaving them out. We're saying if you choose to drop out of the traditional program, we're going to put you at uplift and get you some credit recovery. We're putting you in a computer-assisted program, which, by the way, will lend itself to getting that high school credit. So there's no excuse for the students not being able to graduate. We have an Excel campus over at Woodrow Wilson High School. If a student fails Algebra 1 in the regular course of the school year, they can go to Excel the same time every day in the evening and take that course, and it doesn't impact how many courses they take during the confines of the school day. In other words, I don't have to repeat Algebra 1. I can still move on with my number of credits because I know I don't have a lot of time. I can still earn credits and earn an extra one by going to Excel to take that course again. Early warning system, we have data occasion where we report out in groups for students who are working together or tiering of our students, and expansion of credit courses to feeder middle schools. We have offered, in the last 3 years, we've placed more high school credit courses at the middle school, because I am one who truly believes that if a student leaves the 9th grade having 6 or more credits, that student is going to graduate on time. Now, if I'm a student and I have less than 6 credits, and I'm finishing my freshman year, and I don't have 6 credits, I need to struggle. I may not make it in time. But if I can start credits early at the middle school level, get you a jump start, and you move forward, I'm getting you out of there on time. School improvement support. School improvement is everybody in the city. It's not just Norcom. The school depends on all of us. Division governors. We had Norcom and division governors for 2 years, and they're still there, and we're going to keep them because this year we're getting full accreditation. We have monthly meetings with the leadership team. We deploy our staff on a weekly basis. School division updates and reports to our board every month. The governors meetings, the minutes are reported. Our board members require governors minutes. Internal academic reviews, we do monthly action steps. When we go to the school, to Norcom High School each month, we leave action steps. By the time we come back next month, we want this done, we want this done, we want that done. And they're very receptive in working with us. Schedule of classroom visit, we're in that building every day, visiting somebody's classroom. Faculty and staff involvement, professional learning community, we ask them to do professional development ongoing, and they have chosen a recipe to nourish your team and culture. It's about building relationships. This is one of the big topics for my board members this year, building relationships. And Norcom has chosen this particular book as a professional learning community. It is immersed. The entire school is involved. Parental involvement. They have an active PTA with new leadership in the PTA over the past 2 years. They have freshman orientation, senior parent meetings, parent volunteers, members of the school improvement team, and parental portal to access student grades. We move on. Community stakeholder involvement. Here are the stakeholders, including you. Business partners. We have Rice Engineer, we have the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, we have Earl's Industry at times. We also have the new Kroger has taken on IC Norcom. In fact, they have a room over there that they're calling the IC Norcom room in that center at Kroger. Alumni Association, big on scholarships to seniors at the end of each year. Communities in School, wrap-around program where we serve families, not only students, but their families. Dental support, eyeglasses, talking about social work, anything that we need to help them with. Community and faith-based organizations can't say enough. They have been providing tutors ongoing at Norcom High School. Very significant. And of course, our Portsmouth City Council and administration, with what you do to help us support Norcom High School. We truly appreciate it. School board involvement, our board is active. Participating in school improvement plan, they tell us, we want to hear this school this month. And Norcom High School was one that presented last year. Presentation to the school improvement plan by the school leadership team that happened in January for the board. We had them in monthly governance, September through June. Every month, annual report of school status presented to the school board retreat. Just this past school board retreat, our board members asked for a profile of every school. And we talked about each school. They worked through each school and we sort of answered questions and really got into the whole idea of relationships as well as academics this summer. The ultimate goal in school improvement is that the people associated with the school to to drive this continuous improvement for the sake of their own children and students. And finally, I will say to you that I see Norcom High School current rating now that the State Department of Education did approve on October 23rd, because of the tremendous improvement, conditional accreditation rating for IC Norcom High School. It gives us time this year to get to the next one, which is the goal of fully accreditation by the end of this year.
Dr. Fisher, a couple of questions.
Yes.
First of all, the conditional accreditation, what is the time period there?
Yes, they give us 3 years, but we don't need 3 years.
Okay.
We're going to be fully accredited this year, at the end of this year.
Okay. Second question, you talked about the Johns Hopkins model, and you may use that over in the other schools.
Yeah.
And I remember talking and having a meeting with the superintendent about the progress that Wilson had made and the huge gap that they had made there. Why would you implement that there when there's already, it looks like Mr. Johnson has
They're
got things
fine.
on the right
What we
track?
did for them, for Wilson, is to provide them with a coach.
Okay.
2 years ago. And with the coaching experience and the professional development that came out for Wilson, they were able to survive. They didn't hit as low as Norcom was with mathematics. I think they ended up that year when the standards changed at about 57 or 60%, which is really far better. But when you have to come from 37,
That's right.
you need a little bit more, you know. So we've got the coach there, and we also have put that instructional, because the state says you have to reconstitute based on 3 things, and we chose 2. One was the staff with respect to mathematics and the administration, and the second one was the Johns Hopkins instructional model. That's a requirement.
Last question on the Johns Hopkins model. Are they giving you an actual format and you follow this, what's called the Johns Hopkins
Yes.
format?
Absolutely.
And if there's somebody making sure that you're hitting all of those pieces?
It happens in the classroom, and it also happens during tutorial sessions. It is a computer-based program where the foundation and students will move in progression based on the skill level, the skill set. As they master one, they were able to move on to the next. So they sort of, the sequence is in place there. But basically, we'll find that it works for the students who really have not totally developed that foundation, because most of the problems with Algebra 1 stems with the fundamentals. And that's what Johns Hopkins will help them to do.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Dr.
Yes.
Fisher? Yeah.
Dr. Fisher, this was an excellent presentation. It gave clarity, it cleared up any questions, and put to rest and buried any rumors that were speculating going around. So this was excellent. I have something to make war with now when people want to talk about it.
And any other questions? Okay, as she take her seat, I want to compliment this school board on your retreat this year, and I think you invited all of your principals to come, and you wanted to hear directly from them, and I thought that was admirable to be able to, and they let you have it, and they were very open with their comments and the challenges and opportunities. And I don't know, is that the first year you did that, or?
First time we did
I
it.
thought that was great. And, anyway,
First time we did it.
very good. Okay, item 3, the state budget shortfalls and revenues.
I think both sides are on
Yeah,
that.
we I think we beat this one to death, but who's going to take us through
Mr.
the
Steele, did you have any you want to start with?
state budget?
Own figures, or is that?
We've put together a couple things that address probably the next 2 agenda items. This one and the General Assembly issues.
Now, we've been, just for your information, abreast about this subject, but not as it pertains to actual schools. So, if you want to just briefly stick with that piece, we heard the big high-level drama.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, we heard a lot from the school side too, from the Virginia Department of Education, Virginia Association of School Business Officials, and also the regional superintendents have had meetings specifically on these budget issues as it applies to all districts. And there's a lot of concern out there for K-12. And as you can see, there's been a shift since 2007. and the per pupil cost adjusted for inflation has actually gone down as far as state funding to localities for public schools. And since 2008, the state K-12 adopted policy changes had reduced funding by about $1.8 million. And I can give you some examples of those. For instance, in 2009, there was a cap put on for support positions, and that cost localities about $754 million. They eliminated school construction grants, which affected localities by about $55 million in 2009. Eliminated equipment, travel, miscellaneous expenses from standards of quality calculations, and the standards of quality are applied to different aspects of funding school from state funding. And that affected schools $244 million in 2010. Eliminated lottery support for school construction in 2010, which affected localities about $67 million. Eliminated enrollment loss assistance, about $16 million. Eliminated non-personal inflation update, which was built into the formula for funding, but it was eliminated, and that cost districts about $109 million. So there's been a steady erosion of K-12 funding coming from the state and putting more pressure on localities to either make up for that or just adapt to the new funding picture. Because
We're
of that,
38th in the nation.
yes. Now, one of the things we're looking at closely, because it affects our looking ahead for our budget, is VRS. It affected us last year and affects us this year. And there have been some recent good VRS investment returns lately, but we're not sure how that's going to affect for the next coming year. And that's one of the factors, or one of the key factors we're looking for as it affects compensation. And again, because compensation is more than 80% of our budget, things like VRS, things like healthcare, they affect our budget tremendously. Those are some of the aspects of looking at the state budget shortfalls. We're hearing that K-12 is not going to be affected too much in what the governor is going to present in December for this fiscal year, but there is K-12 issues that may be on the table looking at 2016, and that's what we're.
How do you brace yourself for that? I mean, what's Plan B? Do we have something in a lockbox on? Okay,
There's Plan A, then there's Plan A, then there's Plan A.
No magic formula.
All called Plan A.
That's right.
so based on these figures here, you're thinking this year the governor's in his December report's going to not affect us?
They're saying that for K-12, at least that's what they're putting out right now. For K-12, it's going to affect localities, but for K-12.
Okay.
But then going on 1 July of 2015, for fiscal year 16, they haven't ruled out, and they're talking about impacts to K-12.
Questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions. One, we appropriated some money just a week ago for teacher bonuses or salary increases. Where are we with that? Or where are you with that?
Voted on it.
We've discussed it, and we're looking at our budget. We're trying to still arrange to try to come up with a raise instead of,
But, so you haven't decided yet?
we
I
have.
mean, I realize it's only been a week.
Yeah, that's all I can tell you. We've only had just that little bit of free time for the discussion.
Voted on it.
Did we vote on?
We voted on that.
Right.
I forgot.
We voted on that.
Voted on that.
Okay, 2% raise. Sorry, they did.
So
You voted on the raise, what
You
was
voted on a raise, not a bonus?
Back, not what it is.
2% raise?
When will that be implemented?
Hold up, Mr. Moody.
21st.
She had two questions. What was your second?
The second one, and that's just because I don't recall, we had a lot of discussion about health insurance and self-insurance. You all are starting that in January?
We're
Is that
hoping to
correct?
start that in January, the self-insurance
Yeah,
program.
yeah. We're hoping to start. That doesn't sound like we're going to start.
No. Mr. Steele,
We start.
Self-insured.
The self-insured piece?
Self-insured will start 1 January.
We'll start, not we're hoping.
Will.
No, let me
It
defer to him. He's got the figures on
The
it.
plan is out and self-insurance starts 1 January.
There's a difference.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't have the last information from him, that's why I just pointed to him.
Okay, Ms. Moody?
My question was, when will the raises for the teachers be implemented?
Initially, it's been proposed for December 21st, and that was the first, I guess, to align with the payday cycle. That's good. And we weren't doing it in the middle of the pay cycle.
And second question, the school bus personnel issue, when will they have those discussions coming along?
You want to do it?
There's, as part of your package, I believe, there's a number of actions as it relates to bus and transportation issues and employees that work for transportation. And part of it was this raise issue, because a number of the issues are compensation. But it wasn't just a raise, it was incentives. One of the things that we don't do for a lot of our 10-month employees is we don't pay for holidays, and we were looking for holiday pay. And then also, because we have a hard time maintaining a lot of school bus drivers, just like all the other districts around here, we were looking for incentives like providing an extra premium for volunteering for extra runs, because you may have 10, maybe to 15 bus drivers that may be sick in any one day, and you quickly have to fill in
Double up.
existing drivers to help with that. So all those are actions that affect compensation, but we also have a lot of procedural issues that we wanted to iron out too. And those things, we are identifying those, and we have both short, middle, and long-term fixes that we're working on to address those. In your package, I believe is a synopsis from the survey, from the committee meetings we've had, and also a survey of all the bus driver and monitors. In fact, we got a very good response rate on our survey. I think we had over 100 return surveys from those employees, and based on that, we set up this action plan to address each of their concerns.
And Mr. Moody, let me jump in here also, because I happened to attend the meeting that they held at the City Park during the summer. Also several other meetings that we called as an administration. And they have some legitimate concerns. They're not new. They've been ongoing for a while. But at this particular point, we're making all the effort that we can to try to support and address some of those. We put out an update at the last meeting last week with our transportation staff. And there were many things with respect to, as Mr. Steele has indicated, procedures, such as supplies and those kinds of things. We made sure that they can go over to Clark wherever they need to on a weekly basis, or however, whatever the time frame may be, to pick up whatever supplies they're there. There are issues with, for example, student behaviors from time to time. We've put out a special announcement and requirement of our principals through our principal sessions and through our reporting mechanism that we want to make sure that when students misbehave on the bus, that we take those very seriously. If there are referrals there that are coming in from a bus driver or a bus monitor, we want our principals to act on them. And because riding the bus is a privilege, and the reality is that they must behave on the bus because it is a safety. I told them at City Park, as well as the other meetings, that safety and security on the bus will not be negotiated, not at all. Those are two things we take very seriously, and we expect that that's going to be followed. We have issues with certain things with equipment from time to time. We've been able to replace a few radios as they were. The holiday pay, you've heard from Mr. Steele already. We're looking at what we might be able to do with that at the end of the year for the spring break. But as far as the compensation for extra runs, that's a biggie. We're instituting that. We say December, but we're actually hoping that we might be able to get started in November. So there are many things, and you will find on your report that we've provided for you, not only these updates, but there's a complete action plan for long mid, and short-range activities for bus drivers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me ask you while we're still on that point, have you communicated this with the?
Yes, bus drivers.
When did you do that?
Actually, we had a meeting, when was that meeting?
21st?
October 20th.
October the 21st, we had a meeting. We also had talked with them at the school board meeting. They came over to school board meeting just last Thursday, on the 23rd. So yes, they are aware of, and they have a copy of the updates.
Okay.
I told them what I put in writing, because there were all kinds of rumors out there, you know. And people will say things and what have you, but if it's in writing, they can pretty much be assured that we were addressing those.
Very good. Yeah, I actually attended a Saturday morning meeting and Miss Armstrong and Mr. Lamb were there, and a lot of these issues seemed like they were addressed. One that actually concerned me was the communication piece. There's a committee that was set up, and I think they felt that we're picking
was
who
done.
serves on it instead of allowing them
Yeah.
to
They
pick more
volunteer-
experienced people.
Yeah, they volunteered to serve in the committee, but what they shared with me that they had committees in past years, and it was divisive.
Yeah.
And that they feel that any kind of committee, and I explained to them that the purpose of the committee was not to do the work of the administration, but simply to begin to update the regulations and procedures so that we're consistent in what we're doing. But with that information going out, we certainly don't want to create any more divisiveness, so we have abandoned that particular committee, and we're working through the entire group as we meet with them on a monthly basis.
Very good, very good. And the other one was, and I don't understand the terminology, but there was about if I run a shuttle versus my actual normal route,
Yeah.
it neglected or kept someone from doing a shuttle when someone else could help. Sound like they had a plan to work together, but the rules don't allow
Yeah.
you to allow them to help each other, so somebody can do an extra shuttle. Am I saying that right, Laurel or Ted? And
Yeah,
please.
it was,
Double
please.
shifts.
Yeah.
Extra run.
Extra run. Those are the ones we have decided we're going to compensate beginning December.
Okay,
The
all right,
extra
very
runs.
good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. All right, I'm glad to hear that.
Item 4.
Okay, item 4 here, the General Assembly session. Do we have anything else on budget shortfalls from the council side? Okay, very good.
Great.
All right, item 4,
Job.
hot topics.
We put together, I guess, a list of some things that we might solicit some city council help as we go into the General Assembly and as a team look for lobbying the appropriate people. But one of the things we wanted to point out to council is we want to oppose any funding methodology that results in further shifting funding responsibility from the state to the locality. And support a joint study of JLARC, which has done a couple of these in the past, to determine how the standards of quality may be revisited. And we fully support that, and also adequately funding the standards of learning and the standards of accreditation requirements. So as bills are being developed, any of those that coming up with new funding methodology, those need to be scrutinized very closely. In addition, we want, I guess, an enhanced effort looking at both the adequacy, the total amount of funding for K-12, but also the equity. And there's been a lot of press and studies and articles from a whole number of sources recently, and you even see school districts suing the state, nationwide for adequately funding districts, and it's happening more and more. But a recent JLARC study that was just finished this June 2014 addresses part of this issue, especially as it looks at schools in urban high-poverty communities. Another one that was just put out recently in this October was a U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights that is also looking at the problem of unequal access to educational resources and how that's affected in some cases by state formulas. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, also a recent article, talks about what we talked about before on how the level of state funding has gone down since back in 2007 and how that's affecting schools. Dr. Fisher mentioned teacher retention and recruitment, and again, trying to move state funding to support that and getting us at least close to the national average, and particularly looking at how to address hard-to-recruit teachers like math teachers. Restore SOQ support cost reductions. Again, since 2007, the SOQ standards, the funding for those has decreased significantly, the position of the Virginia School Board Association and other education associations is for the General Assembly to restore the reductions since 2007. And also looking at fully funding the cost of K-12 through benchmarking. And again, that looks at that will improve probably every school district as far as education funding, but recently the re-benchmarking legislation has usually fallen off the table, and they haven't funded for that. So this is just a list of a few items that, as we go into the General Assembly session, that we'd like the city to be aware of the education perspective of some of the initiatives that may be put together for legislation.
All right, and just as a footnote, and I see Sherry over there, we just met up in Richmond a couple of weeks ago in Roanoke with VML on the legislative committee and sending all of that whole agenda package to the General Assembly, and this was a big item. And a lot of those things were actually being led by Councilman Tommy Smeagol over in Norfolk, who I think he's a principal at the high school level now, and he was at a middle school, and so he
Dynamite young man.
he did a great job in that, in shaping some of the issues that we had, and then we prioritized our top 5, and this was one of the top 5. Is that right, Sherry? And so it's statewide, and I think one of the most astounding things when they start talking about accreditation, they mentioned one of the districts, I think Henrico County, had 3 schools, which from their gestures that's unheard of. So for all of you to keep talking about Portsmouth and Petersburg and Norfolk, you got one of the top, they consider premiums, and 3 schools that are in this quagmire. And so it just showed how this whole reformatting piece and changing of the testing is kind of all over. And then I think it was several in Virginia Beach that were astounding. So this is a statewide, and it's not specific to just our kids or those. So
When it was reported that, it was a small article in the paper, but it was reported that Booker T didn't get conditional, and then they mentioned, Norcom, by the way, Norcom did get
it.
conditional.
By the way.
So it was like a by the way, it was included with the ones that didn't make it, but they included Norcom at the bottom. By the way, but Norcom did make it.
okay, is there anything else here? Okay. All right, Booker. Any questions or comments from any of the board members or council members?
The biggest question that, anything that we would have is, does the current way we're doing the financials now more appropriately provide you with the information that you so desire?
I think we have to read it.
Wait.
Let us digest this.
That would be the biggest question.
The format looks good.
It's very
Format is
comprehensive.
very good.
You can see that. It's most
I
comprehensive.
agree with Elizabeth, we need to digest the numbers.
But I have to say, thank you for concentrating this on, the Norcom thing we all need to know, the public needs to know. But to me, this meeting does need to be predominantly about finance, because that's what we're here for. And so I appreciate that, and I'll study what you gave me.
And again, I want to applaud you for the progress in all of those areas, but specifically over in Norcom, we can get wrapped up in public opinion and people misleading the public and all of those types of things. And it does none of us any good for our elected officials to jump in the middle of that hearsay and make matters worse. And the facts does matter, and this shows. And now, this board that, for the conditional piece, was it a board you had to convince, or?
It was the actual State Board of Education, the Virginia State Board of Education.
So you provided those statistics to them, and they granted this for us?
President Brumlick and the State Board members and then the state superintendent was a part of this. You sit around on the dais just as you all would do for your
Now,
council.
did every district had to make that case for their schools?
Every district that
had a case.
That had a case, yes.
Okay.
And there
We
were many
clearly had a
there,
case.
and there were many questions following the presentations. And I would tell you that because of what has happened at Norcom High School, there were no questions when we finished.
Yeah, very good.
I can
Well,
see
thank
why.
you for representing.
You get it.
Is there anything else? Yes, sir. Any other matters? All right, anything outside of the agenda? Ms. Costello? Ms. Williams?
Well, certainly, I'm happy that we're having this meeting, that we want to start off on a fresh new beginning. And I think Councilman Meek said it very well at the last council meeting that I attended, that people were saying we don't get along. We get along very well.
Okay.
I mean, Elizabeth and I were doing karaoke last week.
Say what?
We've had, I have lunch. Did you record that? I mean, Laura.
Did you record that?
It's on Facebook. Yeah, we were the backup singers for the Temptations, my girl.
Oh, my God. Can we hear a
You know,
sample
we're
of
doing a
it?
lot of things
Yes.
people don't know,
Yes.
but they like to focus on the negative.
Right.
And so,
That sells papers.
Right, negativity.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm happy we're having this meeting. I think we should have more and discuss the issues that really affect us, which are
Ms.
basically
Armstrong?
funding issues.
I thank you for the opportunity to sit with us so that we could explain all the things that we're doing to make Portsmouth school system what it needs to be to continue to move it forward.
Okay. Ms. Lamb?
I think this is my third meeting, and I think this is probably the easiest and most jovial that we've had. I mean, and it's good that we are talking. You know, I think for the most part, that has been an issue and a problem. There's obviously we have issues ongoing and so forth, even with the budget. You know, I just don't, just my own opinion as a classroom teacher, I don't see that improving. So we definitely got to, with the dollars that we get, we have to utilize them the best way and appropriately. And the only way that we're going to do that is really by communicating.
That's right.
There's just no other way we're going to get through it.
Okay,
So-
very good. Before I get to you, Ms. McBride, now, let me thank you two for your participation in that meeting that Saturday morning. I was very impressed with how you handled that crowd. Understand, I got bashed later because I didn't say anything, but I was invited. I came to listen. I wanted to hear the facts, and I thought you guys handled it extremely well, Ms. Armstrong and you. And so that was the reason why I didn't make it matters either better or worse. So thank you for the way you handled that, because I kind of observed the room and the people as you two were speaking, and you could kind of see them calming down because the hype was just way out of control. So I admire both of you for what you did and how you did it. Ms.
you.
Ridenhour.
Yes, if we're going to talk about schools, I always have to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
The last week and a half, I've sat from 9 o'clock till 4, listening to our schools, elementary, middle, and high school, present their school improvement work, where they are, the things they're doing to get fully accredited. Nobody has a clue of all the work these principals and supervisors and teachers are doing. I sit and listen, and I swell up with being proud, and I compliment them every single time because they are making a great difference in our school system, even though we have 20 million critics out there working against it. If any of you would come and listen to a school improvement plan or walk into some of the schools where it is happening, you too would be proud of what's happening for our young people in the school system. It's out of this world. I've certainly enjoyed it. They thank me for coming. I thank them for the pleasure because it's really uplifting.
Very good. Mr. Flynn?
I'm not sure how Ms. Castile is going to do magic, but we are going to make sure that our schools, especially our staff, our teachers, our bus drivers, and all of those persons who work for Portsmouth Public Schools are treated well as it relates to compensation. And although it was answered in a very gray answer, I assure you that the board is behind making sure that teachers are treated just as well as everyone else. And they saw us vote on things on last week as it related to voting for persons who support the school and support the board. But I want teachers to know publicly that we support them as well. We're not just spending money on outside agencies. We will make sure that our money is used to keep their momentum, motivation, and rigor going, because that's something that needs to be said publicly, and that's something that teachers need to be aware of, that we're advocating for that. And Mr. Steele enjoys working with us. So we know that even if it's a headache, we will be able to make sure that these teachers are able to say before the end of the year, we're not going to wait. And we told the bus drivers that as well, we're not going to wait. We're trying to improve their compensation as immediate as possible.
Okay. And so just for clarity, a 2% raise across the board raise for everyone?
That's right.
School-wide. Okay, thank you. Mr. Parent?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Bridger and I worked together on the subcommittee for the Finance Committee, and with the rest of the board members. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to make sure that the format that you received tonight is in a format that's very transparent, because I think that's one of the criticisms that we as a board that we have gotten over the last year and a half, that we appear to be hiding money that we don't have. And so we've created this based on the SBA's format, and we've adopted several others so that the format that you have is very clear. You know where the appropriation is, you know where we're spending it, and so there shouldn't be any more questions about finances. We've cleared that up. The other thing is instruction, because I think once you clear up what you said, Councilman Simmons, about the finances, then the other part that Dr. Fisher presented tonight is instruction, because we know we have to have all of our schools have to be accredited, fully accredited. And we've been looking at the number of schools that have reached the 600 mark. I mean, that's a perfect score. We want more and more of our schools having 600 clubs. Now, I'm not saying 700 clubs because I'm going to get in trouble. Pat Robertson, but the 600 club is a perfect score. The more we really emphasize perfect scores, and not just the 400, because
AP
400
students
and AP students.
And dual enrollment, those are those students.
That's great. And the last thing is that during school improvement this summer, we talked about the four R's. One is rigor, and you've heard Dr. Fisher talk this evening about rigor, because the standards have changed. And versus, we've looked at, and the State Board of Education has looked at Common Core versus the standards of learning. And we certainly don't want to adopt the Common Core, a curriculum that is for all the states. I mean, you can't compare that with us. So I think Virginia's doing a very good job with the rigor. The resilience is very important, because we have a lot of students coming from disadvantage, and we've talked about poverty. Poverty, we know, is just one example. It is not the determinant whether or not a child can pass. It's a factor. We don't deny that environment is not a factor, because it is. But we have so many students. If you have quality teachers, and I think that's what we've really tried to stress with you and the citizens of Portsmouth, because you can have, everybody can say we want to retain and hire quality teachers. Well, that sounds good politically. But the most important thing, and the research bears this out, that you can have the best classroom with all of the resources, all the digital components you want. But if you don't have a quality, highly compensated teacher that understands how to use those resources, it's not going to work. So teacher quality is critical. The other thing is where it's relevant. Is the information that is being presented, is it relevant? I mean, does it make sense to kids? I mean, are we hooking them so that they understand what's going on? And the last one I think is most important. I think that y'all had resilience is on the bottom, but I moved it up to relationships. If we don't build relationships, if teachers and all the full staff, including crossing guards and bus drivers, don't build relationships with our students, and if we don't build relationships to show the citizens of Portsmouth that we're going to work together because we want to improve the image of Portsmouth, we want to show people that we can work together because it's important that we resolve problems together. And that's one of the reasons I put in that question that we all had to answer, that it would be nice that twice a year that if we come together in a public forum and invite the citizens to come and just ask us questions. I mean, this is great. This is once a quarter is great for us, but let's go out to the public and let's go and have them come and ask questions so that they see that we're transparent and that we're trying to work together and we're not foes. We're actually working together for the citizens and for employees and for most important these children. That's why I say just for the kids.
Just for kids, very good. And to piggyback on that, we meet and have community meetings quarterly, one at Wilson, Churchland. We rotate them around. It may be an opportunity for us to do something jointly there and have all of the citizens to come to be able to ask, and we can be able to do that. So that's a good idea. Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get all the school board members and then I'm going to come here before we...
Okay. Well, another meeting, hopefully it's another opportunity for us to take advantage of what we've learned here tonight together as a group. Our 2,200 plus or minus employees that we have, it's one thing that we found out on our search for a superintendent. They're dedicated. This staff, this board is dedicated to the progress of our children that we oversee. And someone asked me that, say, how many kids do you have? I said, 14,000. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I'm serious. I serve on the school board, and I look at each one as my kid because I look at it like this. If we can get another successful kid out of the school system that's learning into a college or a job or whatever, that's a plus for us. And that's what I'm here for.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I think Ms. Randall had a comment, and then Mr. Moody. But before we go to you, let me just, if you could get back to me on your homeless children that we have in our school system and just some of the data, because I want to bump that up. It's in that Cook report, but I just wanted to make sure that we're abreast here of the number of homeless kids that we have and the things that we are required to do to be able to make sure that those kids are
There's a grant on our agenda tomorrow night for homeless children.
And so that would be great.
I can get the exact number from the amount, especially for transportation, but I think
it's in his report. For some reason, I got $21,000 a year per student is what Dr. Cook had mentioned, and I don't know if I got that number right. That's an extremely high number.
We spend over 200 and something thousand a year for transportation alone. For transportation alone, over 200,000.
So how do you know where to go pick up a homeless child?
Wherever they're at.
The information, they bring it to us.
They bring it to you.
Sometimes we get it from social services, sometimes we get it directly from the parent and so forth, but wherever they are, we have to transport them. If they're our students and they're living in homes in Norfolk or Virginia Beach, we have to transport them down, and we pay for that. Norfolk and Virginia Beach will do the same thing if they're students and they're displaced in Portsmouth. They pay on their end, but we're responsible for the transportation.
Okay, very good. And you mentioned your superintendent search, and I think I've mentioned this several times. I want to do it again. Applaud you for your inclusion of all of the citizens, all of the council, other elected officials, talking with your search committee and getting feedback. I think that is admirable, and I've heard very positive comments about that. So again, thank you for that.
Last count, they had over 30 applications.
Over 30, that's very good. Ms. Randall.
I would just like to say thumbs up to our school board. I came from working with the schools and knowing and having walked in your shoes. So I know what it's all about. And I commend each and every one of you for the job that you've done, because I know what it's all about. And I work with many of you, most of you, in fact, personally, as a school person in the schools. And I'm saying, until you really walk in someone's shoes and understand what they have to deal with, it's hard for you to really decipher the ins and outs that make it all come together and look good on a piece of paper, or to someone who's never traveled that road and had to perform the roads. I commend you, because I think this was very purposefully, because it opened the door and it cleared minds of perceptions. And you've all heard perceptions are dangerous. And we've cleared many of the misconceptions. And I commend you, because the presentation was clear and there were no circles or clouds in it. It's a clear window pane. I think with that we can move forward and work together as a cohesive team, because we all make up the Portsmouth family. And if we can do that with open minds, and remember that the products that you are producing are going to be the ones that are going to be the leaders in our city tomorrow. So we know we can look forward to a bright future with education and anything else that we want to do in the city, if we but first of all keep open minds, a pure heart, and a giving spirit, where we are saying we are going to give the best that we have to give, so that the next generation that comes through can reciprocate and give it to the generations that follow. I commend you. I think you've given a clear description of what you're all about and what your purposes, goals, and objectives are. And anybody near, if they view this program, can see you're committed to your missions. And I want them to know I'm proud of you, because I know from whence you came. And I think you've done a super job. And I want to publicly say you did a beautiful job explaining what your mission and your purpose has been all about in trying to unravel and bring us together on one sheet of paper, reading the same dialogue. And I just had to say it because I've seen both sides of it. And I think you've done a beautiful job of doing it. I commend you in conducting a meeting this way. The city can see that truly we are family. And that's what we're all about.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Randall. And with your recent announcement of your return, I think this is your last one of these, so you get the privilege of making that very kind remark to our school board. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to say one more thing.
All right, you
for
get
that.
one more thing.
I came on this council, and many of you knew it because I talked with you before I came, because I was saying we needed to do a better job of not just talking about the family, but practicing what a family is all about. And I say, I thank God that at this moment in time, I can say I realized it and I saw the vision clearly coming through. I love each and every one of you. And I might be going home retiring, but I'm going to be watching over your shoulders. And I'm going to make a joyful noise as long as God gives me a breath of life to speak out for you. So nobody's going to put you down. I just want you to know that. Thank you, Claude.
Moody?
Well, after that, I don't know that I'm going
You want to leave well enough alone?
Just sit right there.
What I will say, Dr. Holly used to say, and we'll put this in the proper perspective, I think Councilwoman Randall probably just did that. I was going to piggyback on what Claude had said about meeting, and I've advocated this, and hopefully we can address it, get the new superintendent on board, and I think we need to have joint retreats, perhaps a couple of times a year, where the public could attend those, maybe at about a wee setting. But I would like for us at the proper time to consider that. The other thing is, a good meeting starts with a good agenda, and the agenda today was, I don't know who, I'm sure there was a collaboration on that, but it was wonderful. I've been to a few of these meetings. It was more than just let's eat dinner and get the meeting over with meeting. It was substantial. I think the viewers who watch it will learn something from it. And hopefully we can duplicate this type of format in the quarterly meetings and even expound on it in a joint retreat setting.
Okay, very good. Mr. Chair.
Just briefly, Mayor, I don't know about the number of meetings but we have, but I think it's most important is the quality of the meeting that we have. And this was a quality meeting. And I look forward to reading the rest of the documents. And of course, and I know there'll be some questions, but we're in a place where we talk to each other, not just around the table. We talk to each other all the time, which most people don't know. And so as long as we keep the lines of communication open, I always say 99% of the world's problems can be solved with good communication. And I think we have that, so let's just keep it going for the sake of Portsmouth and all our kids.
Elizabeth, you don't want to touch it?
Do we have a time frame for a superintendent announcement?
January.
She's right
She told us she didn't want to make it permanent.
Passionate. Okay, I guess I got my answer.
You got an answer.
Yes, I told her to put it.
We're looking at January.
Do it anyway.
For a date.
Don't backtrack. Come on.
No. I'm not going to backtrack, but to be honest with you, we're looking at anywhere between January and the 1st of March.
First quarter.
First quarter. That's what we're hoping for. It depends on if we find the right person on the first go round. That's the key. If we can find the fit for Portsmouth on the first go round.
And if we could, a little personal privilege and in honor of our retiree here, if we could hold hands and ask our Dr. Edmonds if he would close us out in a word of prayer, I would really appreciate that, and I know Ms. Randall and all the others will. That means we hold hands, Phil.
To God.
Please get the camera on this.
That's why I needed to be here tonight,
Dr. Edmonds.
If you like what you heard in this place today, gently squeeze your neighbor's hand.
He said gently.
Amen. Dear God, we thank you, Lord, for this meeting, a much-needed meeting, and we applaud you, God, for allowing it to happen. We thank you, God, for the senior person among us, not because of age, but because of wisdom and knowledge. We thank you for Ms. Randall. We thank you, Lord, for what she brings to the table and has brought to the table, because we knew her when she was at her best, even when she was a principal in the school herself. So we ask God that in this circle, that we will always be about the business of the good of the citizens of Portsmouth, especially our children. And we ask God that you continue to open up doors and pour out things that we can use and do to make our schools even better. Help us, God, to be able to disagree but not be disagreeable. And not to play out things for the press, but to play out things for the good of the community. Bless us in that way and in that effort. We give you all praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. That was a good meeting.
I want to close for this or do this tomorrow.
We all on the same sheet. Y'all stay on.